So, the story of this film begins 800 years ago. In an ancient desert, we see a spaceship. The landing of the spaceship causes a terrible storm in the desert, and the nearby people start running to save their lives. Among the fleeing people, there was a girl whose necklace fell on the ground while running. After the scene cuts, the story shifts to the present time. 800 years have passed since the spaceship landed there. Research is being conducted at the same place, and a boy named Wu finds the same necklace that fell from the girl's neck. The professor, upon examining it, says that this necklace is very old and could be very valuable. Wu is happy to hear this. A little later, a man named John arrives there and says that whatever you find here is my right. In response, Wu asks, "Where are you from?" We learn that Wu and his professor's team have been researching here for many years. After the research, they discovered that hundreds of years ago, there was a city called Loulan here. They also found some pieces of wood there, and when they put them together, they found a map of the city of Loulan. Looking at this map and the girl's necklace, the professor created a story, suggesting that the condition of the city underground indicated that there must have been a famine there 800 years ago. And this necklace was worn only by monks at that time. Their monk, a religious leader, was a girl, and she had this necklace. When the famine struck, the monk ran towards the temple, but then she died in the storm. The scene cuts to the past, where we see the same monk that Wu and his team were talking about. The monk's name was Yaman, who was running with her companions away from the storm. These people barely reached the temple, but the condition of Chen was very bad. We learn that Chen was the king of the city of Loulan, but now his condition was dire. He was taking his last breaths. And during this time, he tells Yaman to stay away from his brother as he is not a good person. Saying this, Chen dies. And Yaman, saddened, goes inside the temple. She was praying to God that God save this city from famine. As she was praying, the lamps in the temple were burning, and suddenly a bright light emerged from a glass installed inside the temple, as if it were sunlight, and then suddenly the glass fell to the ground and shattered. Yaman felt that God wanted to say something to her through this glass. But the scene cuts to the present. We see Wu in the present. Wu and his professor's team, after collecting all the old things from the city of Loulan, were heading back to the university, unaware that someone was following them. Here, two people were hiding on their train who were actually accomplices of their enemy John. John actually wanted to keep all the things of the city of Loulan for himself, because the city of Loulan had ended 800 years ago. And if someone discovers it in today's time, they would receive a big reward from the government. John wanted to get all the things of the city of Loulan and get the reward from the government. It is shown that John's men were about to shoot Wu, because Wu had saved the things of the city of Loulan. Before they could shoot Wu, suddenly all the passengers on the train stand up. They had pistols in their hands. And we find out that they were actually Chinese soldiers. They pick up their two comrades, who were thrown out of the train. After which, Wu starts checking his belongings. As soon as he opens the suitcase, he sees the same mirror that we saw with Yaman 800 years ago. Seeing this mirror, he got scared because it was broken, and he thought that maybe it was because of him. But he didn't know the truth that this mirror was already broken. He brought this mirror to his home. Despite trying hard, the mirror didn't get fixed. The scene cuts and we see Yaman again, who was praying to God to fix everything. As soon as she prays, we see that a strange magic is happening in the mirror, and the mirror begins to repair itself. In the present time, Wu's mirror also started to get fixed. Light was also coming out from this mirror. Suddenly, Wu hears a girl's voice. He looked around, but there was no girl. So he got scared, and when he looked in the mirror, he saw Yaman. Through this mirror, Yaman could see Wu, and Wu could see Yaman. It was clear that this mirror had connected two timelines. Yaman thinks that Wu is a god, so she starts praying to him. Wu was confused, not knowing who Yaman was and how she ended up inside the mirror. To find out the answer, he starts looking into Yaman's background, and now he quickly realized that this mirror had connected two timelines, and he could see the city of Loulan 800 years ago. He tells Yaman that he is not a god, but just an ordinary person who is talking from the future. He pleads with Yaman, asking if she could show him her surroundings. Yaman does so. After this, Wu asks Yaman many questions about the city of Loulan, and Yaman answers all his questions. Wu could find out the things about the city of Loulan that people wanted to know through Yaman. He was very happy to know all this. He got all the answers. But before he could ask Yaman anything else, he sees that Yaman's health is not good. He goes to his fridge to get something to eat, and he gives it to Yaman. Yaman also reaches out her hand into the mirror and grabs it, and she starts eating it, and it was very delicious. Yaman had never eaten anything like this before. While eating, Yaman starts talking to Wu, and after a while, they develop a good understanding between them. It is shown that in no time, Wu, based on the information he got from Yaman, writes a book on the city of Loulan. Wu receives a big reward from the government for conducting such a large research. At this ceremony, we see that John was also there, who was quite surprised by Wu's success. He couldn't understand how Wu learned so many truths so quickly. He realizes that there is some secret behind this. Anyway, we see that Wu goes back to his home, and through the mirror, he contacts Yaman again. Today, Yaman looked quite sad. Wu asks, "What happened to you?" Yaman replies that there has been a great devastation here. Our king is very bad. Earlier, the king here used to be Chen. He was very kind. But then his brother betrayed him and took over the government. After that, the city started heading towards destruction. Yaman tells Wu about the spaceship, which we saw landing in the past at the beginning of the story. Yaman tells him that through a flying object, gods have come to us, whom the evil king wants to kill. Wu understands that Yaman is talking about aliens, who must have come here in a spaceship, and the king must have killed the aliens. While they were talking, we see that Wu's companion was outside the door, listening to their entire conversation. Before he could come in, John's men kidnap him. And now through this girl, John discovers Wu's secret of how he wrote a book on the city of Loulan so quickly. So John sends his 2 men to Wu's house to steal the mirror. Here we see that Wu was sleeping with the mirror. He didn't keep the mirror away from him, because he had fallen in love with Yaman. Without seeing Yaman, without talking to her, he couldn't sleep. Through this mirror, Yaman had become a part of his life, a very important part. Even after Yaman fell asleep, he kept looking at her. Now Yaman even appeared in his dreams. Here we see that John's 2 men break into Wu's house. But luckily, Wu found out about their arrival, and Wu ran away with his mirror through the window behind his room. He hid in a corner and tried to inform Yaman of his situation through the mirror. Meanwhile, a man named John started chasing him. Who wanted to take this mirror? Before he could say anything else, John puts his hand on Wu's shoulder and takes the mirror from his hand. John's men capture Wu. On the other hand, we see that even in Yaman's temple, the soldiers of Loulan's evil king captured Yaman, and due to their separation, the gate of this mirror closed. Yaman is now taken to the king, and the king asks her about the truth of this mirror. Yaman says nothing, but her soldiers say that this is a magical mirror through which we can go to heaven. But only Yaman can open this mirror because she is a monk. The king now takes Yaman to the temple of God. It was not actually a temple of God, but an alien spaceship. They killed the aliens and captured them. At present, we see that John is taking Wu to the alien spaceship. He enters the alien spaceship and asks Wu to open the portal of this mirror. Whereas 800 years ago, the same thing was happening with Yaman, and the king was asking her to open the portal of the mirror. At different times, both Yaman and Wu climb onto the alien spaceship, and as soon as they take the mirror and place it in front of their faces, a storm of light begins, a portal opens, and the 2 timelines converge. As a result, Wu and Yaman can now see each other. They confront each other. As Wu sees Yaman, he embraces her. Seeing him, Yaman also becomes emotional because she had also started loving him. After this, he takes Yaman away from her and says, "Everything will be fine, don't worry." John sees all this and becomes furious. In his rage, he shoots Wu. When he shoots, the portal closes. On the other hand, 800 years ago, Yaman was also captured by the king's soldiers. Wu, who was shot in the shoulder, is rescued by his companions. And as the portal closes, the king and his soldiers arrive in the future world. It is shown that Yaman was 800 years ago, and as soon as the king arrives, the portal closes. The evil king asks John, "Is this heaven?" John says, "Yes, this is heaven, and I am your God." Hearing this, the evil king becomes angry because he wanted to become God himself. He grabs his soldier's weapon and in anger, kills one of John's men. Thus, a battle ensues between John and the king. The king's soldiers had old weapons, while John's people had ordinary pistols. Fortunately, Wu and his companions, who had already fled from there, survived this storm. After the scene cuts, we are shown a scene several years later. Wu is now old. He has returned here because research is still being conducted. Another team was researching here, and they found more ancient things. Wu picks up one of them and looks at it. Something was written there in an ancient language. After talking to Yaman, he had gained knowledge of the ancient language, so he could easily read this language. The same poem was written on this stone that Yaman had heard in ancient times. Yaman had written this. And when he sees this, tears come to his eyes. And looking at this piece, Wu realizes that Yaman did not die that day when the portal closed. She was alive and spent the rest of her life remembering Wu. He smiles while remembering Yaman, and the story of this film ends here. Let me know if you need anything else.